What this young man is about to discover will change his life forever. If you enjoy stories like this, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new stories. Jaden Walker was 16 years old and lived with his mother in Eastbridge, a neighborhood where the future was fragile and the routine dangerous. Sirens were frequent, streetlights flickered as if crying for help, and people moved quickly, as if standing still was too risky. Growing up there meant constantly being tempted by silent invitations to take the wrong path. Jaden had already seen childhood friends disappear, get lost, or become statistics before turning 18. But he resisted. He was smart, focused, observant. Since he was a child, he stood out in his studies, which led him to be accepted at Glenville High, a top public school located in a neighborhood where the gardens were well maintained and the doors had more glass than locks. The difference between where he studied and where he lived was stark, but Jaden knew how to navigate both worlds. He arrived early, left quietly. He liked the organized environment, the challenging classes, and especially having a place where he could simply be a student without his background weighing so heavily. Since they were 10, he had studied with Sophia Camden, daughter of Henry, and Emma, the couple his mother, Amelia, worked for as a housekeeper. They met as kids in a class full of new faces and had stayed side by side through every school year since. They grew up together, understanding each other with few words. Jaden trusted Sophia more than anyone at school, and she respected him, without ever treating him differently. That Monday, he woke up early, as usual. The sound of footsteps in the yard and the smell of coffee signaled that his mother was already up. "Did you sleep well?" Amelia asked, placing 2 slices of bread in the skillet. "I did," he replied, tying his shoelaces. "But I dreamed you were making me study chemistry even on the weekend." She laughed, her voice rough with fatigue. "You don't need to dream about it. It's real." Too bad the dream had fresh juice and a fan running. Science fiction, then. Jaden smiled and sat at the table. Sharing those mornings with her was one of the few things that calmed him. Amelia held everything together with dignity. The simple house, the hard work, the gap between the two worlds they lived in. But with him, she allowed herself to be light. "Today I have a double biology class. Sophia already said she's dragging me to work on the science fair project." "Dragging? You love studying with her." "Not with DNA models made out of jelly beans." She laughed again, handing him a glass of water. "Better than scrubbing marble bathtubs. I'd say it's a tie." They left the house almost at the same time. Amelia turned the corner to catch her bus, while Jaden headed in the opposite direction. On the way to Glenville, the city seemed to change. The sidewalks improved, cars drove slower, stores had clean awnings, and people crossed at the crosswalks. The contrast with Eastbridge was almost cruel. Arriving at school, he went up to the second floor and saw Sophia already seated in class, flipping through a notebook, a pen between her teeth. "You got here before me," he said, pulling out the chair next to her. "Only because Theodore drove me today. He had a doctor's appointment and dropped me off on the way." Jaden scoffed. "Lucky you." I caught the sarcasm. Sophia knew the backstory. Theodore was a year and a half older than her, in his final semester of high school, but in a different class. And he never missed a chance to remind Jaden that he was the housekeeper's son whenever they crossed paths. He didn't need words. His cold, judgmental stares were enough. During class, Jaden stayed focused. He took notes quickly, paying attention to every detail. Next to him, Sophia doodled diagrams for the science project and whispered comments about their classmates. He only chuckled occasionally, the kind of laughter that came easily because her company was good. At recess, they sat under their usual tree, reviewing notes or simply talking. "Are you really thinking about joining the science club?" she asked. "I'm considering it." "You're always considering. One day you'll think so long you'll miss the deadline." Jaden smiled. "Maybe I will, but without the jelly beans." "No chance," she teased. "It's the soul of the project." At the end of the day, as they were leaving school, they saw a dark car parked out front. Theodore was at the wheel. Sophia waved, and he lightly honked. She turned to Jaden. "Want a ride?" "Better not." "Are you sure?" "Yeah." He knew what would come next. If he got into that car, Theodore would greet him with the same look he used to exterminate bugs in the garden. He preferred to walk, even if it meant almost a 40-minute walk back to Eastbridge. "See you tomorrow," she said, and he responded, with a calm wave. As he walked, Jaden thought about school, his conversation with his mom, the tension with Theodore. But he also thought that, despite all the differences, he was still there. And for now, that was enough. It was just before 6 when Jaden came downstairs to the kitchen. Amelia was already there, brewing coffee with the press and putting slices of bread in the toaster. The smell of peanut butter filled the small room. The radio played softly in the background, an old song Amelia always put on early, maybe out of habit, maybe to give some rhythm to their rushed days. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, son. Did you sleep well?" "Yes. Are you coming home late today?" "I think so. Emma wants to reorganize the closet. It'll be one of those days of opening boxes and moving hangers." Jaden sat down and spread peanut butter on the still warm toast while she poured herself some coffee. "They sure like to invent work, huh? Rich people find ways to keep busy so they won't admit they don't have real problems," Amelia said with a light smile. "But that's fine. As long as they call me, I'll go. Every hour of work helps keep things together here." Jaden nodded, chewing slowly. Even at his young age, he understood the weight his mother carried. They didn't have luxury, but they had their routine. That small table, the warm bread, and the strong coffee were, in a way, what kept them grounded. "Any problems at school?" she suddenly asked. "No, just the science fair coming up. Sophia's already pressuring me to start working on the project." "What are you two planning to do?" "We're thinking of something with light and refraction. Nothing too complicated." "You've always had that way of wanting to solve everything logically," Amelia said, looking at him proudly. "I just hope you keep that same approach with people too." He smiled slightly, but deep down he knew that when it came to people, things were always a bit messier. After breakfast, Jaden headed to the bus stop. The streets were still dark, with only a few lights shining in some windows. Neighbors who left early greeted him with brief nods. It was always the same scene. Eastbridge waking up slowly, carrying its own codes and risks. Crossing the city to Glenville High was like crossing into another world. From cracked asphalt to smooth avenues. From improvised fences to well-maintained gardens. And he always observed this transition with a mix of detachment and caution. When he arrived, Sophia was waiting for him at the gate. She held a coffee cup, wearing thin gloves because of the cold morning wind. "I thought you were going to miss the bus today," she said. "I run faster than the bus." They walked together through the still empty hallways. During the first classes, everything followed the usual routine. Tests, exercises, casual comments from classmates. Jaden was used to Glenville's rhythm. He kept his grades high, stayed quiet, and avoided getting too involved in conversations that didn't belong to his world. During lunch, they sat at their usual table in the corner of the cafeteria. "We really need to start the project soon," Sophia said, unwrapping her sandwich. "I've thought of a few ideas. If we set up a simple experiment with prisms, we can show the decomposition of light. It's visual and people always like that." "Perfect. And honestly, way better than those volcano models," Jaden laughed. "Volcanoes are always the last resort for people with no ideas." "Exactly," she replied, taking a bite. They chatted a bit more until the bell rang. The day went on without surprises. Jaden liked that predictability. The fewer surprises, the more control he felt over everything. But at the end of the last class, something small, but different, happened. While packing up their things, Sophia got a notification on her phone. Almost instinctively, she pulled the phone closer, blocking the screen with her fingers. She quickly put it away in her backpack as if trying to hide it. Jaden noticed. It was subtle but unusual. Between them, there were usually no secrets. Sophia always shared everything almost. "Automatically, who was it?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Oh, nothing important, just some silly chat. But the way she avoided his gaze didn't go unnoticed. He didn't push, but the uneasy feeling lingered in his chest. An unsettling discomfort he couldn't quite name. It wasn't distrust nor anger, but something different. For years, Sophia had been almost an extension of his life, always together in class, projects, late afternoon talks. And for the first time, he felt a wall between them. Something new, something he wasn't used to feeling, and it left him restless. As they left, she said, "My brother's already waiting. See you tomorrow?" "Always." She smiled and headed to the car. Theodore was at the wheel as usual, not even glancing at Jaden. The usual disdain. Jaden, as always, turned the opposite direction and headed home. During the walk, the cold wind hit his face while his mind tried to sort through his thoughts. Why did that simple gesture from Sophia affect him so much? Why did it bother him this way? At home, Amelia greeted him with simple cheeseburgers and roasted potatoes. "How was your day?" she asked, setting the table. Normal, but strange in a silly way. Strange how? Jaden hesitated. How could he explain a feeling he didn't even understand? Just different. Amelia watched him with that knowing, motherly look. "Even when you don't want to talk, I can always tell when something's changed." He smiled. "I know, Mom." After dinner, he went up to his room, threw himself onto the bed, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time, he felt a kind of jealousy he'd never felt before. A new, uncomfortable, hard-to-explain discomfort. And he knew that from now on, something inside him was no longer the same. The rest of the week passed with a strange rhythm. Classes continued, exams kept coming, projects moved forward. But Jaden carried that feeling trapped in his chest, as if trying to piece together a puzzle that still didn't have all its pieces. Since the message incident, Sophia had acted as usual. She started conversations, laughed, discussed ideas for the science fair, sat next to him in the cafeteria. But even though her behavior seemed the same, Jaden noticed small things, details. She checked her phone more often. Sometimes when typing, she slightly turned the device on the table. And she always quickly ended conversations when he got close. Jaden didn't want to be paranoid. He was never the type to meddle in other people's lives. But something was different, and the worst part was not knowing whether the problem was what was happening or what he was feeling. On Thursday, while they were building the first version of the refraction experiment in the science lab, Sophia tried to keep the mood light. "If this light breaks through the glass the way I imagined, it'll look beautiful," she said, adjusting the small prism in the holder. Jaden was quieter than usual. "Jay, are you okay?" "I'm fine." "It doesn't seem like it." He took a deep breath and looked away from the equipment. "Just got a lot on my mind." "Like what?" He hesitated. "Everything. Exams, the project, the fair." Sophia stared at him for a few seconds as if trying to figure out if that was really it. Then she went back to adjusting the experiment. "Well, if that's all, we've got this." "Like always," she said, trying to lighten the mood. The experiment worked. Well, when the light passed through the prism, a small rainbow appeared on the table. Sophia celebrated. "Perfect. Now we just need to fine-tune the presentation text and we're ready." Jaden forced a smile. He didn't want to ruin the moment. As they left the lab, Sophia received another notification. This time, she didn't even try to hide it. She simply locked the screen quickly and slipped the phone into her pocket. "Again?" Jaden blurted without thinking much. Sophia stopped for a moment, surprised by his tone. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just seems like you've been getting a lot of messages lately." She stared at him, as if measuring how far this conversation might go. "What if I told you it's just some guy who started chatting with me online?" she said directly. Jaden's stomach tightened. It wasn't surprising, but hearing it out loud felt different. "I see," he answered, trying to keep his tone steady. "It's nothing serious," she added, as if feeling the need to explain. He nodded, but the discomfort remained. At the end of the day, as usual, Sophia went down to the parking lot where Theodore was waiting in the car. Jaden exited through the main gate and walked home. The walk home felt longer than usual. The afternoon cold pressed on his shoulders, but not as much as what he carried inside. And along the way, his mind wouldn't stop. It wasn't just jealousy. It was the fear of losing the one space where he truly felt seen. When he got home, Amelia was preparing dinner. Pancakes with maple syrup, a little treat they managed to have once in a while. "We've got a special dinner tonight," she said, serving the plate. "Had a few extra bucks left over this week." Jaden smiled warmly. "Best mom in the world." "And you're my best project," she replied, sitting beside him. They ate while chatting about simple things. The washing machine making a weird noise, the neighbor's dog escaping again, the bills still needing to be paid. But inside, Jaden could barely pay attention. After dinner, he went up to his room. He stared at his phone for a while, but didn't feel like starting any conversations. The few notifications that popped up were from study groups or school tasks. Reminders. He turned on his side in bed trying to sleep, but the discomfort grew. It wasn't just friendship he felt, not anymore, and worse. He was starting to realize that her world, so different from his, could drift apart at any moment, and there would be nothing he could do to stop it. The weekend arrived, but Jaden couldn't turn his mind off. He tried to get ahead on some school readings, organize his notes for the science fair project, even tidied up the small bookshelf in his room, something he rarely did. But everything was just to keep himself busy while his thoughts kept circling back to the same point. Sophia. Since that conversation in the lab, the weight inside his chest had only grown. Jaden wasn't naive. He knew that at some point, Sophia would start drawing attention from other guys. Maybe it had already started, and he couldn't pretend it didn't bother him. On Sunday afternoon, while reviewing some algebra exercises, his phone buzzed with a message from her. "Hey, there's something happening at school tomorrow after class. They're opening sign-ups for the debate club. Want to come with me just to check it out? You don't have to join." Jaden read the message a few times before replying. The invite seemed casual, but coming from her, it always carried a little more. "Okay, I'll meet you at the exit." Monday at school felt like any other day. Classes dragged on as if the clock refused to move. Sophia was excited, talking about plans for the project, but Jaden still felt that subtle uneasiness hidden behind their conversations. During lunch, Sophia was enthusiastic about the club. "I've always wanted to try, but I kept postponing. I think I'll do it now," she said, taking a bite of her grilled chicken sandwich. Jaden nodded, munching on a bag of pretzels. "It suits you," he commented. She smiled. "But it's not really your thing, right?" He gave a small smile. "I'm more of a behind-the-scenes guy. You guys put on the show, I set up the stage." Sophia laughed. It was his way of dodging the discomfort. But inside, the fear kept growing. Her world was expanding into spaces where he didn't know if there would be room for him. After class, they met at the exit as planned. "Ready?" Sophia asked, smiling. "I'm here, aren't I?" They walked together to the school's small auditorium, where a few groups were already chatting. Jaden stood slightly back while Sophia greeted some people from the club. There were students of all types, people he barely spoke to, some upperclassmen, talkative classmates full of energy. Jaden watched quietly. He never felt like he belonged. In this kind of environment, he always preferred the back of the classroom, the exact logic of formulas, the safety of numbers. Here, everything seemed so open, exposed. One of the club's seniors, a tall guy named Ethan, came over to greet them. "Sophia, finally giving the club a shot?" "Maybe," she replied with a smile. "I'm just here to watch today." Ethan turned to Jaden and extended his hand. "What about you? Joining too?" Jaden shook his hand awkwardly. "Just tagging along today. You'd like it. Debating is good for people who think fast, and I hear you're pretty sharp." Jaden forced a polite smile. During the presentation, Jaden noticed how easily Sophia fit in. It was like the space around her naturally opened up. She chatted with one person, laughed with another. Jaden kept observing while feeling a distance growing. Not a physical distance, but something that seemed to be slowly pushing him out of her world. At the end of the presentation, Sophia turned to him excitedly. "See? It wasn't so boring." "Yeah, interesting," he said, putting his backpack on. "There's still time to sign up. I know you'd be great at this." Jaden smiled but looked away. "I'll think about it." As they walked to the parking lot, the sky was already darkening, and the cool air cut against their faces. "Theodore's on his way," she said. "Want to wait a bit?" "I'll walk. I'm used to the route." Sophia nodded, but before saying goodbye, she gently grabbed his arm. "Jay, you know that no matter what, I'm still here, right?" He looked at her for a few seconds. He wanted to say a lot, but simply nodded. "I know." He watched Theodore's car pull up, Sophia get in, and the car drive off down the street. The walk back to Eastbridge felt heavy. Each step brought a mix of fear, doubt, and a bitter taste of reality. For the first time, Jaden was beginning to feel what he had always known in theory. Some people get to choose what to do with their future. Others have to fight just to hold on to what they already have, and maybe, without realizing it, Sophia wasn't pulling away by choice, but because her world had always been wider than his. School routine went on as usual, but inside Jaden, something was changing. What had once been just friendship with Sophia now carried a different weight, even if he didn't quite know how to name it. It was as if he was crossing a line without even realizing it. That Tuesday, as they were fine-tuning the last details of their science fair experiment, Sophia was excited. The teacher said if our project turns out really good, we might get to present it at the regional fair. "Then let's make sure it's good," Jaden replied, trying to stay focused on the project, though his mind was restless. As Sophia adjusted the prism, Jaden watched the way she furrowed her brow in concentration. He noticed details he hadn't paid much attention to before. The movement of her hands, the small smile when something worked, the shine in her eyes when she got excited. Without realizing it, he started doing little things. He moved her backpack from the chair to the floor without her asking. He handed her notebooks before she even looked for them. He held the door as they left the classroom. All subtle, nothing obvious, but different. At lunch, they sat at their usual table. Sophia spoke while slicing an apple with the small pocket knife she always carried. "If everything works out at the fair, can you imagine? It could even help with college applications." "That's more your thing," Jaden said, smiling. "You talk like you're not good enough," she replied, looking at him. "You know you are." Jaden held her gaze a bit longer than usual. "I know, but some things just come more naturally to you." "Like what?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Like fitting in anywhere, talking to anyone." "I've always been more reserved," Sophia smiled softly. "That's why we work well together. I pull you out of your shell a little and you pull me back when I go too far." Jaden laughed, but inside something was growing. A desire to be closer, to have a bigger place in her life. Later, after their last class, as they walked to the gate, Jaden did something he had never done before. "Soph," he started, his tone a bit more serious. I was thinking, if one day you want to, we could go out. Just the two of us, like grab a coffee or something." The invitation came out simple, no pressure, no expectations. Sophia stopped walking, surprised but smiling softly. "Wow, Jay, hearing you say that, who would have thought?" He gave a small smile, trying to seem calm. "I had to step out of my shell sometime, right?" "Yeah," she replied, still a bit surprised. "Let me think about it, but I liked hearing it." The subject hung in the air. Sophia smiled lightly, then looked away as Theodore pulled up with the car. Jaden stood there watching the car drive off. His heart was racing, but there was a strange relief in finally having taken a step. On the way home, the cold wind hit his face, but he walked with his head held high. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was doing something instead of just watching life happen. When he got home, Amelia was in the kitchen making something simple, mac and cheese with peas. Smell already filled the small apartment. "Hey, son," she asked, stirring the pot. You're coming in with a different vibe today. Jaden grabbed a plate, served himself, and answered while trying to hide his smile. Just working up the courage to do a few things I should have done a long time ago. Amelia sat beside him, giving him that motherly look that understood more than he said. Sometimes the biggest step is simply taking the first one. The rest we figure out along the way. Jaden nodded, feeling the peace only a simple conversation like that could bring. But deep down, he knew the story was starting to enter new territory, and now there was no turning back. It was late afternoon when Jaden picked up his phone and stared at the screen for several minutes. His conversations with Sophia always flowed, but this time what he wanted to send was different. It wasn't about school or the science fair anymore. This was a step he had been rehearsing for days. He took a deep breath and finally typed, "Hey, I was thinking, if you're free on Saturday, how about we go to the movies? Just the two of us." He reread the message several times before hitting send. As soon as he pressed the button, his heart started racing in a strange way. Her reply came quickly. "Of course, pick the movie, I'm in." He let out a slow breath, relieved. For the first time, this wasn't just a casual hangout between friends. It was something more, even though neither of them had said it out loud yet. On Saturday, Jaden arrived early at the movie theater. He wore his best shirt, his cleanest pair of jeans, and the sneakers he kept spotless for rare occasions like this. His hands were sweaty, but his smile was steady. Sophia arrived shortly after, wearing a simple light dress, smiling as she saw him. "I thought you were going to leave me standing here." "I wouldn't be that crazy." They bought popcorn and drinks, picked seats in the middle of the theater, and settled in. The movie was a light romantic comedy, a safe choice to ease the tension he still felt at the beginning. During the movie, they laughed together, whispered quick comments, and from time to time their hands brushed while reaching for popcorn. Jaden didn't pull his hand away quickly. He let the touch linger, as if the gesture spoke for him. When the movie ended, they stepped out onto the brightly lit sidewalk. The cool night breeze followed them. "So did I make a good choice?" he asked. "Very. You're now officially allowed to invite me to the movies again," she joked. "I'll make a note of that." Their walk led them to a nearby ice cream shop. They ordered their favorite flavors. Sophia got strawberry with chocolate syrup. Jaden went for vanilla with cookies and sat at a small outdoor table. The place was quiet, with soft music playing in the background. They talked about the movie, the science fair, and upcoming school assignments. But at one point, Sophia looked at him more thoughtfully and shifted the conversation. "Jay, we've known each other for years, but I realized you never talk about your father. Ever. Why is that?" Jaden stopped stirring his ice cream. He looked down for a few seconds before lifting his eyes to meet hers. "Because there's not much to say." Sophia stayed silent, letting him continue when he was ready. "I never met him. My mom was pregnant when he disappeared. He never wanted to be part of my life, or hers. He vanished." "And your mom never tried to find him?" Jaden shook his head slowly. "No, she's afraid of him, says he was a bad man, the kind of person we're better off not knowing anything about. I grew up knowing my mom was enough. It's always been just her and me. And honestly, I don't miss something I never had." Sophia nodded, her gaze warm. "Your mom is incredible." Jaden smiled proudly. "She's everything. She's been both mom and dad at the same time. And she did a better job than a lot of people with a full family." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was comfortable, as if they had, in that moment, opened a new layer of trust. Sophia then smiled and said in a lighter tone, "Now that you've invited me to the movies, just for the record, I'm totally open to going out with you again." Jaden chuckled softly. "I'll pretend I didn't just etch that into my brain." They paid for the ice cream and slowly walked to the parking lot. Theodore was already waiting in the car, as usual. Before getting in, Sophia turned to Jaden, still smiling. "Thank you for tonight, Jay, really. Thank you, Soph, it was special." She smiled one more time before getting into the car. Jaden stood there for a few seconds, watching the car disappear down the street. His heart was light, his mind racing. Something was beginning, and this time he didn't need to guess. Now it was real. In the days following that night at the movies, Jayden carried two very different weights in his chest. One was light and new, the feeling of finally getting closer to Sophia in a different way. The other was old, but now growing, curiosity about his father. For years, Jayden had accepted the absence. He had learned to live with the silence surrounding the story his mother never wanted to tell. But now, something inside him was demanding answers. It wasn't just curiosity. It was an emptiness that started to bother him, especially now that for the first time, he felt like he might be building something of his own with someone. And in this new space, there were missing pieces of his past. That evening, after reviewing some notes for the science fair, Jayden went down to the kitchen, where Amelia was making a simple dinner, roasted chicken with corn and rice. Smells good, he said, trying to ease his own nervousness. Let's hope it tastes just as good, she replied with her usual smile. They sat at the table, chatted a bit about school, about homework piling up, about Emma's work in the building, where Amelia worked, but Jayden was restless. He poked at his food, his eyes constantly shifting. Amelia quickly noticed. What's bothering you, son? Jayden hesitated. He took a deep breath. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. You always can. He raised his eyes, serious. About my father. Amelia froze for a moment. The smile faded slightly, but she tried to keep her voice calm. Jayden, I know what you've always told me, he continued, his tone steady. But I can't just accept it anymore. I've grown up. I have the right to know who he was or who he is. Amelia closed her eyes for a moment, trying to gather her thoughts. Son, knowing his name won't change anything. It won't fill what you think is missing. But I need to know. Not because I want him back, or because I want him in my life. I just need to know. I don't even know his name, Mom. It's like I'm half of a story no one wants to tell. Amelia swallowed hard. Her eyes now carried a mix of fear and protection. He was a bad man, Jayden. I spent years trying to protect you from that part of your story. I didn't want you growing up with that shadow hanging over you. Bad. How? She hesitated. The kind of man who should never have been in my life. I was young, and I trusted someone I shouldn't have. When he found out I was pregnant, he disappeared. And honestly, it was for the best. I chose never to go after him. I didn't want to put you in danger. Jayden sat in silence, absorbing every word. But he's still alive? Amelia sighed. I don't know. And to be honest, I never wanted to know. His name, Jayden insisted. She shook her head slowly. I don't want you near that, son. Just trust me. Some doors, once you open them, can never be closed again. Jayden took a deep breath, but frustration was starting to build. Mom, I love you, but I'm not a child anymore. I deserve at least the chance to decide if I want to know. Amelia placed her hand over his, firm, trying not to let her emotions overflow. I know, my love, but I've spent my whole life protecting you. It's not easy to suddenly open something I fought so hard to keep locked away. It's not that you can't handle it. It's that I don't want you to carry what I carried. There was a long pause. Jayden squeezed her hand gently. I understand what you're trying to do. I just don't know if I'll be able to stop thinking about it now. Amelia sighed. I know you won't, and that worries me. That night, as Jayden went up to his room, the conversation kept spinning in his mind. It wasn't anger toward his mother. It wasn't ingratitude. It was just the weight of knowing that the closer he got to the truth, the more he realized there was a hole that couldn't be filled with love alone. Now, he knew a part of his story was hidden, and sooner or later, he would go after it. The sun had barely risen when Jayden came downstairs to the kitchen. Amelia was already there, brewing coffee with the press and placing slices of bread in the skillet. The warm smell of butter filled the small apartment. But that morning, the atmosphere was heavy. It wasn't just another ordinary day. Jayden sat silently at the table, watching his mother move around for a few moments, until he finally gathered the courage to say what had been building inside him since the night before. "Mom, I know you're trying to protect me, but I can't stop thinking about it." Amelia stopped stirring the coffee and looked directly at her son. The exhaustion in her eyes wasn't from lack of sleep, but from years of carrying what she never wanted to share. "Jaden, I don't need everything at once, just tell me who he really was." She sighed, sat at the table, and stayed quiet for a while before starting. "He was someone from outside our world. I worked in a house. He used to visit. He was friends with the owners, a man with money, business, connections. He thought he was above any consequences." Amelia took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on a distant point. "When I told him I was pregnant, his reaction was immediate. He wanted me to get rid of you, said I was ruining his life, that you were just a mistake that needed to be taken care of quickly. He didn't want to lose his clean image." Jaden's stomach turned just hearing it. "And you refused?" "Of course. I would never do that." Then he changed his tone, started threatening me, said that if I insisted he would take care of me. Even while I was pregnant, he had connections, said no one would miss a poor housekeeper. She swallowed hard. "It was months of fear, Jay. I didn't leave the house at night, always afraid someone was following me. But I didn't give in. And when he saw I wouldn't back down, he disappeared, vanished from our lives." Jaden lowered his gaze, a knot forming in his throat. "You went through all that alone. I had you, and that was enough. I fought to raise you far from all of it. I never needed anyone else. And him, today?" Amelia pressed her lips together. "He's still doing well, surrounded by money, pretending we never existed. That's why, Jay, I never wanted you to go after him. People like him don't change." Jaden nodded, feeling the weight of every word. "I'm not going after him, Mom. I just needed to know where I come from and what you protected me from." Amelia held her son's hand. "And I'll keep protecting you always." Jaden took a deep breath, grabbed his backpack, and headed to school. But his mind was no longer the same. The whole day was a blur. Jaden drifted through classes, without really hearing what the teachers said. Formulas and reading seemed distant, drowned by the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. Sophia noticed something was wrong early on. He was quieter, detached, his eyes always lost. But she waited until the end of the day to gently approach. And when the final bell rang, she grabbed his arm before he could leave the classroom. "Jay, what's going on? You didn't pay attention to a single class. Talk to me." Jaden looked around, sighed, and finally broke down right there. "My mom told me, this morning." Finally, he took a deep breath. "Soph, he wanted my mom to abort me. When she refused, he threatened her, said he had connections and could make her disappear, even while she was pregnant. Then he vanished and never came back." Sophia's eyes widened, her face serious. "She never reported him?" Jaden shook his head. "No. She was afraid. She thought his money and connections would make the whole thing disappear. She just wanted to protect me." Sophia stayed silent for a few seconds, absorbing the weight of it all. Then she looked up with a determination Jaden hadn't seen in her before. "Jay, we can't let this stay like this. Not anymore." He stared at her, confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm going to help you. We're going to find out who he is, and we're going to put him in jail, even if it takes as long as it takes." Jaden felt his chest tighten at the strength of her words. For the first time, his story was no longer a painful secret just for him. Now, Sophia was in it with him, and the search for the truth was truly beginning. The house was wrapped in the silence of the night. The wind lightly moved the curtains while Amelia slept soundly in the next room. But Jaden, lying in his bed, stared at the ceiling, his heart pounding. Now that his mother had revealed part of the story, what haunted him was what still remained hidden. He knew there was more. There always had been. When he was sure his mother was in a deep sleep, he quietly got up, stepping carefully on the cold floor. In the living room, he grabbed her purse and took out her phone. Back in his bed, the dim light of the screen illuminated his tense face. He took a deep breath before unlocking the phone and starting to search. At first, There were only ordinary messages, bills, work reminders, conversations with Emma. But as he scrolled through older messages, fragments started to appear that made his blood run cold. Short, incomplete messages, some clearly deleted in the middle of conversations. But what remained was enough to make his heart race. The first message appeared. "I already warned you. Don't make rash decisions. And I know what I need to do if necessary." The threats weren't just from the past. They were still happening. Even years later, that man was still watching. Further down, a new message. "I'm at Whitestone. I can't keep talking about this here. I already told you." Jaden's stomach dropped. Whitestone. He knew that name. That was the company where Sophia's father worked. What once seemed like a distant mystery was now much closer than he ever imagined. He immediately grabbed his own phone and texted Sophia. "Soph, I'm going through my mom's phone right now. I found something. My father works at Whitestone." Her response came almost instantly. "What?" "Jaden, that's my dad's company." But Jaden knew he hadn't seen everything yet. He kept digging. Then he found the older messages from years ago during Amelia's pregnancy. "I'm moving to another city. You'll never see me again, but I'll never forget what you did." And then a reply, short and cruel. "You're not going anywhere. You'll stay close as long as I want. That's what I pay you for. That's why I let you live your little life. And one more thing, I have 2 children, not 3. So keep your mouth shut before I lose my patience." Jaden pulled back in his bed, feeling his entire body go cold. 2 children. He started connecting the dots. The old clothes Emma had given to Amelia that he'd worn since he was little. The constant contempt from Theodore. Henry's cold and distant stares. His mother's strange, ongoing protection over the years. Amelia's job being exactly in that house. He took a deep breath, his head spinning, his heart pounding uncontrollably. He didn't want to believe it. It had to be his mind playing tricks, a confusion caused by the shock. But the more he tried to push the thought away, the more it came back, heavy and undeniable. The anguish inside him kept growing, and what hurt the most was the weight this thought placed on Sophia. He loved Sophia. It wasn't just friendship anymore. And now, everything seemed threatened by a truth he didn't even want to consider. With trembling hands, he grabbed his phone and texted, "Soph, I need to talk to you in person. It's serious." Her reply came almost immediately. "Jay, what happened? Please tell me now. I'm too curious. I can't wait." But Jaden stared at the screen and couldn't answer. The words wouldn't come. He deleted what he was typing, and his throat tight let the phone drop onto the bed. The tears started rolling down uncontrollably. He cried like he hadn't cried in years, until he had no strength left. Until, exhausted, he eventually fell asleep in the middle of his tears. The alarm went off, but Jaden had already been awake for a long time. He had spent most of the night tossing and turning, finally falling asleep exhausted, his face still damp from the tears of the previous night. The day began heavy. It wasn't just physical tiredness. It was the crushing weight of the discovery pressing on his chest with every breath. He couldn't escape it for even a second. When he arrived at school, Sophia was already waiting near the lockers, her face filled with anxiety and nervousness. As soon as she saw him, she rushed over. "Jaden, what's going on? Why didn't you reply last night?" "I couldn't sleep." Jaden lowered his gaze. His throat was dry. He hadn't rehearsed what to say. He knew there was no right way to tell her what needed to be said. "We need somewhere more private," he whispered. Sophia nodded and pulled him to a quiet corner of the courtyard, where few students passed by at that hour. The silence between them dragged out every second. "Jay, talk to me," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper, her heart pounding. Jaden closed his eyes for a few moments, trying to organize the chaos spinning in his head. Finally, he let it out. "Sophia, I went through my mom's phone. I read the old messages, found out more than I ever wanted." She stood there staring at him, tense, waiting. "I found out who my father is." Sophia took a step closer, holding her breath. "Who?" Her voice came out barely audible. Jaden felt his breath falter, his hands sweaty. The words stuck in his throat. The weight was too heavy to say out loud. I can't say it. Read the messages yourself and tell me who you think it is. He pulled out his phone and with tear-filled eyes handed it to Sophia. The messages were already open. The old conversations, the fragments, the threats, all laid out in front of her. Sophia started reading. First, confusion filled her face. Then, as the pieces came together in her mind, her eyes widened. When she reached the final message, "I have 2 children, not 3. Sophia froze, her entire body stiffening. The silence grew heavy. She stared at the screen, in shock. "No," she whispered. "It can't be my father." Jaden couldn't even confirm it aloud. He just nodded, swallowing back tears. Sophia brought her hands to her face, tears streaming down. My father did this to your mother." Jaden tried to speak, but his voice trembled. He's my father too. Look, you're months older than me, and from what I understand, it was exactly when your mother found out she was being cheated on by her ex-boyfriend that she spent the whole day crying. Your mom went to the hospital for your ultrasound, and your dad, or our dad, took advantage of my mom's vulnerability and assaulted her. The day became an endless wait. In the end, Jaden, for the first time, accepted a ride from Theodore, but not to go home. When they arrived, Sophia and Theodore went upstairs with Jaden. Emma was in the living room with Henry. The moment Henry saw Jaden, he exploded. "Who let him in? Only your mother works here. You could have waited." "Downstairs." Sophia, breathing heavily, looked at her mother. "Mom, come here now." Emma, pale, slowly stepped forward, already feeling panic rise. That's when Sophia told everything. The messages, the threats, the hidden pregnancy, the silence, the fear. Every detail poured out into the room. Henry grew redder with every word. When Sophia finished, he shouted, "This is a lie! You're trying to destroy me! I'll ruin you, your mother, and this filthy story!" He lunged toward Jaden, but Jaden, fueled by years of bottled-up rage, stepped forward. "Enough! You ruined my mother's life, tried to erase my existence." Before either could touch, Theodore grabbed Jaden forcefully, stopping the confrontation. So, that moment, Amelia collapsed into tears, falling to the ground, drained. "It's true," she sobbed. "I kept it hidden. I stayed silent all these years to protect my son." Emma, her face white, her voice almost gone, whispered, "It was that day, wasn't it? I was at the hospital." Amelia, still crying, confirmed, "Yes. You were at Sophia's ultrasound, and while I was devastated, he forced himself on me." Emma closed her eyes, tears falling. I always knew something was wrong, Henry. Always. I knew you had cheated on me, but I didn't know it was like this." Amelia continued. "Not only him, but you too. You were sleeping with my boyfriend, and I found out everything that day. Look at her, she's Stephen's spitting image." Amelia pointed at Sophia. Now Henry completely lost control, rage overflowing. "So that means my lovely Soph isn't even mine." A brutal silence fell. Everyone stood frozen. The weight of that irreversible truth hung over them. The masks had fallen, the families had shattered. The destruction was complete. Years later, the phone buzzed on the kitchen table. It was a message from Jaden. "Mom, hurry to the hospital. It's happening. Julian is coming." Amelia felt her heart race. Her trembling hands grabbed her purse quickly. She rushed out of the house, hurrying through the streets of Harmony Creek, the new home they had built together. At the hospital, Jaden paced anxiously back and forth. Sophia was in the delivery room, and he could barely control the overwhelming mix of fear and happiness inside him. The hours seemed endless, but finally the baby's cry echoed down the hallway. Julian had been born. Jaden couldn't hold back. His tears when he saw him for the first time. That tiny life was more than just a child. He was the symbol of a new beginning, the end of a cycle marked by pain and silence, and the start of a completely new story. Now Jaden worked as a senior credit manager at a local company. Sophia, in turn, worked as a community program coordinator, helping families who, like theirs, needed to rebuild. Amelia, who now lived just a few blocks away, was ready to help with little Julian whenever needed. Henry had left the country shortly after the family explosion. He received a job offer on another continent, vanished. From everyone's lives, cut all contact, changed his number, and in many ways chose to erase his own past. Theodore stayed in the city. He was dating a pretty young woman, and still lived with Emma in the luxury apartment they kept after the divorce. In the final settlement, they had kept almost everything. Jaden and Sophia didn't want any of it. For Jaden, the money didn't matter. What mattered was peace. What mattered was the future. What mattered was the promise he carried in his heart since that day. The cycle ends with me. I will never abandon my wife. I will never abandon my child. And I will take care of my mother until the last day of my life. If you were moved by today's story, leave a like and tell us your story in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next.